Good evening, everybody. The Archaeological Society Malta and the Department of Classics and Archaeology at the University of Malta are delighted to welcome you to this, our fifth in the series of talks for 2020-2021, so far all on Zoom. I know that there are several participants, many participants actually today from overseas, so a special welcome to you. And the Zooming of these lectures, of course, has enabled us to enjoy the company of many people from overseas who would never, of course, be with us in the flesh, so to speak. I'm Patricia Camilleri. For those who don't know me, I'm president of the Archaeological Society Malta, and I'll be mediating this evening's session. I'd like to ask again, sorry to repeat it, but it is important that everyone mutes themselves so that we don't have echo issues or noises off, which sometimes happens. I'd like to say that this talk, or inform everybody that this talk is being recorded. The use of your own video is, of course, totally optional. All of this season's lectures are a collaboration between the Department of Classics and Archaeology at the University of Malta and the ASM. Thanks go to the head of the department, Dr. John C. Betts, who I'm very pleased to see is with us this evening, and to Professor Nicholas Bella, who will be joining us shortly. He is ASM Vice President and our link really with the Department of Classics and Archaeology. Just a word about how we shall proceed this evening. I'll be introducing our guest speaker, Liliya Pangelova, then turning the virtual floor over to her. Please do ask any questions that you might have using the chat at any time at all during the lecture. And you can access the chat, for those who are not familiar with Zoom, along the bottom of the screen. I shall ask Liliya to answer at least some of the questions, the queries at the end of the lecture as time allows. This evening's lecture is entitled Introduction to Ancient Roman Glass Forming and Decoration Techniques. So let's move on. A quick word about our guest speaker. Liliya Pangelova is a visual artist originally from Bulgaria, who is now living and working in Malta. After obtaining basic training in academic drawing, painting, sculpture, and design in her home country, she enrolled in the Master of Ceramic and Glass Design program at Mimar Sinan Fine Arts University, Istanbul, where she graduated with a thesis on the effects of ancient Roman glass forming and decoration techniques on contemporary glass art. After this, her fascination for the art of glass glass making brought her to the island of Gozo, where she trains to be a professional glass blower for a number of years. Currently, she is taking her career further into education studies by pursuing a Master in Teaching and Learning Arts degree at the University of Malta. So without further ado, I pass everything over to you, Liliya. If you'd like to just set up your presentation.
Yes, hello and a warm welcome to everyone. And thank you, Miss Patricia, for your kind introduction. And now let's move into Roman glass. You've heard enough about me, so let's hear about the Romans, what they have to tell us. So, as you already know, today's theme it's called Introduction to Roman Glass Forming and Decoration Techniques. And as Miss Patricia Camilleri said, this theme is based on my research on Roman glass. So I'm here to give you an overview and also some detailed information on what I have learned in the previous years about Roman glass and glass in general. So this is a timeline which I have prepared, but it basically speaks the same what Miss Patricia said. It's my journey into glass. So these years, 2009 to 2016, indicate the time when I used to research and study glass academically, and one of my inspirations was Mr. Lino Tagliapietra. He's a very famous Italian glassmaker who influenced my passion in glass blowing in particular. Another major point I want to talk about is glass archaeology, and that's why I'm here. Thanks to two projects, Romische Villaborg, Germany, and the Archaeology Museum in Wezek, Belgium. These are two places where very important projects were held based on reconstruction on Roman glass furnaces and forming techniques. And I will be talking more about them in the following slides. And lastly, it's my practice as a glassmaker. Here I will mention Gozo Glass. It's the place where I worked between 2016 and 19. And this was the period when I actually could practice and learn a lot about glass forming in particular. So thanks to this experience, I'm actually able to speak better and understand even more Roman glass. So the table of contents represents 4 points. So as mentioned, I'll talk about glass in terms of composition and production. Then we'll talk about it in the context of the Roman Empire. I will be mentioning 4 major techniques, so slumping, mold casting, free blowing, and mold blowing, and a few decoration. There are plenty, but I have to focus on some for the reason of time limit. So this would be ribbon glass, ribbed, mosaic marble, and snake thread, if time allows. So we have this slide, which is dedicated to audience interaction with the audience. So my question is, what things are made from glass? And I would like to hear your opinion by this online survey. So I would like to kindly ask you to visit menti.com. It's a website where you can submit your answer to this question. It's totally anonymous, and I would be very glad to hear your opinion. So what is made out of glass? You need to enter menti.com and enter this code. The code will allow you to submit an answer. And then we'll discuss your comments in a minute time. So if you have any difficulties, please write in the chat. Let me see. So I'll allow you 2 minutes for this. Okay. Oh, very, very active. Okay. Do you see this cloud of words which we have? These are your submissions, your comments. Windows, tableware, lamps. Okay, bottles. The biggest word indicates what you've mostly said. So many people have said vases, bottles, windows, vases, cups, drinking vessels. It's true. Jewels. Perfume bottles, tableware, cups. Okay, I can tell you're highly aware that glass is everywhere around us. This is what I want.
Code again, please.
Yes. Oh, 26480223. Okay. So what I meant to say is that glass it's everywhere around us. We are surrounded by glass, and we should be especially thankful to the Roman glass makers for allowing us to use laptop screens, because they're also based on glass. So without this invention, we probably would not have been able to communicate. So glass is very important, and as you have commented, it's found in our tableware, our windows, and as an accessory. And that's how it was in Roman times as well. And here I want to thank you for your contributions. They were very insightful. Now we have to continue and focus on Roman glass. So I've chosen the period between 1st century before Christ to 4th century after Christ, AD. And why did I select this time period? For the reason that this was the times when Roman glass was mostly developed and many forming decoration techniques emerged. And of course, I'll be talking specifically about glass blowing, because this is a crucial part, a crucial component in the development of glass manufacturing. Okay, so next, glass making in the ancient Roman world. Here I want to make this important distinction between Roman glass making and glass working. So by making, I mean the production of glass, the manufacturing, the melting of glass, the process of melting glass in furnace, versus glass working. Glass working means the shaping, the forming, the decoration of glass. So according to historical data, these were two different professions, as we might say. There were people who used to take care of the furnace and people who used to work the glass, and actually there were others who were very good, very professional in decorating. So these were different distinctive roles. And as mentioned, glass workshops were spread in all provinces of the empire. But what was important is that those workshops are situated near areas where raw materials, work materials, and suitable work temperatures could be found. So it wasn't just anywhere where we could find glass workshops. And we will talk in detail about these components in a minute time. Here we can observe a table. We can see this table, which represents the typical components of glass on the left-hand side. This is in the middle a modern soda lime silica glass, and on the right hand, typical Roman. So what can we understand from these numbers? CO2 refers to soda, so sand. This is the main component of glass. It's in high percentage in both modern glass and in Roman. However, as the table goes down, we can see varying numbers in terms of, for example, we see soda, we have calcium, we have potassium. I'm going to read a sentence for each. So, sodium carbonate, for instance, was found in dry lake beds or made from the ash of sea plants. This element is used as flux to reduce the temperature of melting and to increase plasticity in glass. So every element had its purpose for the Romans. Potash referred to wood ash, natural wood ash, whereas calcium oxide referred to lime. So what was important is that glass workshops are situated in areas where these ingredients could be found. Then we would have different types of oxides. For instance, metallic, that could be cobalt oxide for blue color, iron oxide for green, manganese for yellow or purple. So depending on the location of the glass workshops and the supplies they could find, we can talk about glass in different colors or different ingredients. Glass was very different depending on where it was made and how it was manufactured. So let's go back one slide. Here I'm saying that glass was luxury and expensive prior to the invention of glass blowing. This was a fact because with the invention of glass blowing during the Augustan age, glass became more affordable, and this happened with the introduction of mass manufacturing. Whereas before, there were other techniques, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, that were very time-consuming and costly. And here's Strabo. He said, the ancient historian, he said that a glass drinking cup could be bought for a copper coin. So from so expensive and luxurious material before Christ, as expensive as gold or silver, it became to the value of a copper coin. Such a change in just a century's time. So it was a really important period in the history of glassmaking. So another important thing we have to talk about is the furnace. We cannot understand glass making or glass blowing without a glass furnace. So the raw materials I spoke about are recycled glass, so crucibles from previous production were heated up in a glass furnace to a maximum 1100 degrees Celsius. So it could be a minimum, can be 500, 600 to a maximum 1100. Because if the temperature is higher than that, then you can damage the furnace, and this was highly undesirable. And what is important to say is that the glass making and manufacturing required the use of large amounts of wood, and as we said, suitable weather conditions, because it was a manual process. The charging of the glass furnace with wood, with natural resources, was done by hand. So it depended a lot on weather conditions and the workforce. And from here, we can say that glass making in the ancient times, we can conclude, it was a community process. So it was as a collaborative project, I would say. Everyone has their role and responsibilities for the process. And I've also prepared a video, I will show it to you soon, where you can actually observe. You can see how this really happened. So once the glass was melted, temperature was decreased to allow glass shaping and forming. 1100 degrees allows the glass to be very fluid and shapeable. And this is done for blowing, whereas if it's lower degrees, then the glass has less plasticity. It depends on the technique, it depends on the desired effect the Roman glassmakers wanted to achieve. And lastly, after the shaping of glass was completed, the glass vessels were placed in an annealing oven. which means a place where the temperature was lower, so the artifacts could go down gradually. This is very important for glass, because in the process of forming, you have a lot of tension hidden in the glass, which needs to be released gradually, slowly, so they do not crack at the end of the cooling process. So these are the glass forming techniques, which I mentioned briefly: slumping, mold casting, free blowing, and mold blowing. So over here, we have slumping and mold casting. These are two samples of Roman glass vessels. What is common between them is that they're created in mold. However, the decoration, as you may observe, is different. So on the left-hand side, we have colorful stripes of glass, and these are not really stripes. I will tell you, they're glass ribbons. They were prepared beforehand, manually. They were pieces of glass which were stretched. They were wrapped in color and stretched, let cool down, cut, assembled in a composition, melted under certain temperature, and then after the flat disc was placed in a mold and slumped. So the flat disc of ribbons, of glass rods, took the shape of the mold. However, in the other sample, where you can see a clear glass, probably it was not done by rods. It was done by placing crucibles in a mold, small pieces of glass. So it was a very, as I said, time-consuming and costly and precise project. The same goes for these items, the same principle. But instead of glass rods, they used to create a mosaic. As you may say, we've already seen this in Murano, and it's true, because these pieces originate from nowadays Italy. So you can observe the effects of Roman glass on contemporary glass from Murano. On the right-hand side, where you see the blue bowl, I would tell you that there are two techniques. So it's not only the mosaic glass, as you may see there, those small pieces and small rods, but then you have decoration on the surface. So besides working on the color and the texture of the glass, they worked on the mold itself. So the mold was a piece of art, not only the glass. So it's double the work, and that's why these bowls are really, really precious. And as I said, these two techniques, they were very popular before the invention of Roman glass. However, before the invention of glass blowing. However, when glass blowing came into light, their popularity decreased. So let's talk about glass blowing, my favorite. Here you can see different samples, and there are so many images which you can find on the internet or in collections worldwide. There are so many examples, and it's impossible just to include everything in terms of blowing. It was such a strong process. But I have to talk about Ennion. I have to mention his name. He's the first known glass blower. And these are very symbolic items which were produced under his name. I don't know if it's possible to see, but there is a small, a tiny signature of Ennion written in Greek language, which was pressed on the glass vessels. It was part of the mold, actually. It was engraved in the mold. So when you blow the glass inside the mold, you would get his signature. Well, this is one of the evidence of glass authors, of glass craftsmen, but probably there were others. For example, I've read somewhere, don't remember when and where, but there were also women glass blowers. However, we do not have any evidence of that. So that's how we remain with the name of Venyan, and it was based on his signature that is in Greek language. As I said, it's believed that he originated from the Mediterranean region. So it's the origin of glass blowing from Middle East. So Malta is very close to where glass blowing was invented. It was one of the strategic points. And as I promised, I will give you a break of my talk and let you watch this video, which is from the Roman glass reconstructing project at Villa Borg, Germany, which I took part in 2016. And okay, and enjoy this video. Just if you may let me know if there is any sound. Let me see.
Yeah, oops.
Okay. So I hope you got an impression of how Roman glass was made, because this is the closest evidence that we can have at present. This project is, well, based on replicas and reconstruction of Roman glass. As I said, this is in Villaborg, Germany. They even produced the molds and try to recreate the way Romans were working. So this would be on a chair with just two stripes of glass on their knees, very different than contemporary glass blowing, where you have modern studios and a bench to work on. But the principles remain the same. So it's the need of assistant to create the piece, furnace, an annealing oven, shaping tools. These remain the same till present day. So, this is a sample from this project. As I said, in 2016, I had the opportunity to join, and I got inspired by Roman glass and created few items. Here I have links to some useful websites where you can learn more about the reconstruction projects. And if you're interested, you can always contact me and I will send them to you. And let's go back to Malta. These are artifacts from Domus Romana in Udina, the collection, which I had the chance to have access to. And as you may already be able to understand, I hope, based on the reflections that we had, these vessels are obviously blown. So certainly they're created after the 1st century before Christ. So that would be 1st century after Christ. And what I would like to highlight over here is the effect of iridescence on ancient Roman glass, seen on, I would say, yes, it's evident in all these pictures. So I'm talking about this effect, like shininess, I don't know if it's the right word, but shininess, yes, or sparkling or mirror effect on ancient Roman glass, which tells us that glass changed because of the buried conditions, how it was buried in the soil. So it was the heat, the soil type, and the humidity that affected the surface of the glass. So originally it was perhaps of a plain color or transparent, but how we see it nowadays, after so many years, it's very different. However, as I mentioned, this is not the characteristic of the glass itself. It was not intentionally produced in this way. And here are some examples from the National Museum of Archaeology in Valletta, which also I had the chance to see closely, to touch and observe them from close by. This is my hand showing you the size of one of the glass vessels. In the middle, it's a sample of free blown glass. You can see this by its unusual shape and size. Well, you can always have a mold helping for the bottom part, but as we already know, by mold blowing, you can have textures or patterns or even signatures on the glass. However, if it's free blown, it's much more difficult to achieve these effects. And on the right hand side, you can also see another type of vessel with a flat bottom. And this is also a type of vessel which was created. These were all different flasks. They were houseware or perfume bottles. They had different practical properties. Here it's again a vessel, and I'm showing you a mark at the bottom, which stands for the panty mark, so-called panty mark. This is where the additional blowing iron was attached, or by an assistant, as we saw in the video, or it can be the blowing iron itself. So you attach it to the bottom of the glass, so you can open and shape the lid. It's one of the evidence we have. On this picture are two examples of lid, formation of lid. On the left-hand side, it would be folded. As you may see, it's a bit thick and a bit rounded. On the left-hand side, it's much thinner. So there were different ways the Roman glassmakers used to shape glass. They have different techniques. Wasn't always the same. The bottom, it can be the body, it can be the details, which help us to identify the origin of these pieces. And here we're talking about origin. I will remind you about ribbon glass, but in another way. So here we were mentioning marble decoration. But marble decoration was also done with the use of glass rods. However, they were not placed into a mold, so slumped, as I mentioned. They're rather composed. A composition was made, and then a hot bulb of glass was turned on top of them. So the composition of rods stuck on the hot glass, and then it got inflated. And by the movements of the glassmaker, by the use of tools and his motions, we can see how the glass rods melted. They twisted and melted and became one with the transparent glass underneath. This is a very popular technique. And on the left-hand side and the very right-hand side are samples from Domus Romana in Dina. So you have the chance to observe this technique here in Malta. I believe you all went and saw these pieces, but and perhaps at the moment it can be a bit difficult, but you always know that they're there and they're exposed to us. We can always go and see them. And here I want to finish with another technique, snake thread. The name comes from the shape of these lines over here, these textures, which resemble the shape of a snake, colorful snakes. And I chose this decoration because the sample on the left-hand side, it's from the eastern region, whereas the one on the right-hand side is from north. It's from actually Köln in Germany, nowadays Germany. So you can see how one technique, one type of decoration on blown vessels, we speak about blown vessels, differed according to the workshops. So here we can talk about style. So it wasn't only difference in composition of glass or manufacturing conditions. Here we talk about the aesthetics. So what I want to say is that all these things, on one hand, it would be the composition of glass, the elements, the analysis, the microanalysis. And on the other, it will be the aesthetics that help us locate and understand Roman glass better. So it's a comprehensive study. We should not exclude one for the other. So this is my research on Roman glass in brief. There is a lot more to talk about, of course. I have one additional video, but I believe you got an idea. And here I want to thank to the Archaeological Society of Malta for giving me this opportunity to speak about glass tonight, to share my knowledge with you in terms of Miss Patricia Camilleri and Anging Littlejohn. Heritage Malta also for access to pictures and resources. Michelle Sultana and Ray Bondin, of course. I don't know if he's with us tonight, but also Mr. David Cordona for the artifacts in Medina. And lastly, all glass enthusiasts and academicians. I cannot mention all of them, but these are people who helped me in my journey throughout ancient glass and glass in general. So without their support, I wouldn't have been able to hold this presentation. So thank you all, and I hope you learned something new and interesting, and I'm ready for comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was wonderful.
Amazing.
Yes, thank you very much, Liliya, for that. It was really stimulating because I've seen the glass at the Roman, the Domus Romana, and I've seen glass in other museums, but personally, I don't have much knowledge about it, and you've certainly picked up on a few questions that I had about how the glass was made. Anybody wanting to ask a question is most welcome to write in the chat, or if you want to put your hand up. I don't think I can see everybody, but sort of just butt in if you want to speak up. There is one question here I can see.
Just a minute, because I'm not.
You can see them yourself, actually.
Now I see
You see
the chat. For some reason, I was not able to see it.
Okay. There was one question from...
Okay, we have a very good comment over here.
Yes.
That would be about the Panti mark. Yes, it's a good explanation. Using a small blob of hot glass, the Panti serves as a temporary handle while shaping the glass. Yes, this is the attachment method I was talking about. However, as practiced in the project itself, one could use the blowing iron itself for transferring the piece. So there are different ways of doing so. And as I said, and I will leave the stage to the others, it's very difficult to talk about each component and analyze in details for such a short time, because it's a vast area of study, and this is I just brushed the surface basically. So
Cool.
thank
There's
you.
another question about who owned the glass. Can you hear me? Who owned the glass? Was it free market allowed, or any
Okay, yes, I forgot to
glass
mention.
factory?
Yes,
Or
I
was it-
forgot to mention this. So when I spoke about slumped and mold-form vessels before the invention of glass blowing, then we would talk about the elite. So glass was expensive and therefore was accessible for the elite, whereas afterwards it was a matter of mass consumption, let's call it that way, mass Roman consumption of glass.
So anybody could invest in a glass factory.
Yes, it was affordable. Yes.
Very good.
What is one the glass was manufactured here?
Do you have say
I'm
something
seeing.
about the Belzeke project?
I was just reading one comment. Excuse me for a minute. Would you suppose that the glass found in Malta was manufactured here? Well, if I know that there was a glass workshop in Malta, then I would say so. But I don't. Personally, I have no evidence of that. So perhaps it was a matter of trade, because there was a lot of trade in Roman times of various items, and glass was one of them. So this would be my comment. Yes,
So
Patricia.
we don't have evidence. We don't have evidence of there having been a glass blowing factory in Malta in that period.
Well, not as yet.
As yet. There's plenty of questions here.
You had a question. I think I interrupted you
About
by
the project. Somebody was asking about the project. I'm going back to it. Belzeke project?
Yes, the Velzeke project. Okay, yes. Well, the Velzeke project was similar to the one in Germany. That's the reason why I didn't really attach much information on it. It was, yes, it was basically a similar project. It was done with the same team. The year when I had the chance to attend, and it was again matter of replica and reproduction of Roman glass forming and decoration techniques. And of course, there are other places where one could see one could see these techniques, but these are the ones I wanted to emphasize on, and I had visual resources, so in terms of video, so I found it as a better choice for you to illustrate what I was trying to say.
Another question about the blue onion cup in the video. The top was cracked off to form a lid and finished with cold working. Could you say something about cold working?
Okay, so code working, I'm seeing that yes, we have a very how do you say, serious contribution in the chat, because we have with us Mr. Frank Wiesenberg. He's the main figure involved in the Roman glass in the reenactment project of Roman glass furnace, the one I was mentioning all the time. So I can simply refer to his comment, because this is the same what I was going to say. So the code working obtaining cup would be grinding the rim. So we're talking about not opposite of hot way of working the glass. So that would be cutting or engraving. And what happened is the glass was simply cut. Well, it had a scratch, a mark, and with the use of heat, the glass expanded and cracked. This was one of the ways which was done. And then after, obviously, the glass was too sharp, so the cup was not possible to be used straight after cutting. So what needed to be done is to either polish the rim by the use of plane or manually, perhaps with some. I don't really know for certain, but it can be with the use of some soothing material to polish it and to grind it to make it less dangerous, because at the end of the day it's a drinking cup. It had a practical component.
So, what about the Romans were very clever to figure out that the furnace needed to reach 1,100 degrees centigrade. This is something that was discovered suddenly over years. How did they actually realize that that was what was needed? Trial and error?
Well, I guess so. I guess so. Well, as I said, if you go on the internet and research Roman glass, I can do this right now. I can show you very interesting pieces, which are actually some of my favorite. They're far from perfect, but you can see how much effort there is and how much they actually involve themselves in the process. And as you mentioned, it was a matter of trial and error. Not everything was so perfect as we may see. Okay, I found it. And this is the beauty of glass, at least for me, that it's not perfect. It's not perfect. Let me see. For example, gorgeous Roman glass handle jar. Isn't it just gorgeous? It's so like it's so real. You can see that it was a trial. It was not supposed to be like that. Even the proportions are strange or not planned so well. The execution is not perfect, but still, it's a valid example, and there are plenty of those. Or this one. So you can really tell it was made by people.
Absolutely.
I find it. I'm astonished.
There's a lovely, somebody asked a question about the female glassmaker, and there's an answer from Frank Weisenberg with an actual reference, because you said you couldn't remember where you'd read it, but you knew.
Yes, I knew about that. It happened that I learned after my master's degree, so I was like, I should have mentioned that in my studies.
Yeah.
Such a pity.
That link it's there now on the chat. What about this one? What liquid contents were usually stored in the glass receptacles found in Malta? And is there an indication in Roman script if glass receptacles were inherited or in a dowry? Most of them were found in graves, I presume.
Yes, the ones I've seen, yes.
So what did they store in the glass as opposed to, say, pottery?
Well, I don't have enough information on those pieces because I had chance to see them only once. So there is a lot of research to be done. What I tried to highlight was mostly the to provide a context. So when you go and see them once again, or when you see Roman glass, you can understand it better. It would become closer to you. You would know how these handles were attached, for instance. You would know that it was blown in a mold when you see all these details. So, but if we have to speak about composition of particular pieces, this is another type of study, which, how can I say? I'm not very fascinated by the chemistry or the technical aspects of glass. I'm more into the visual side and the interpretation of themes or shapes. And actually, now I remember one thing I forgot to say is that the Anian artifacts, the Anian vessels, they had a lot of mythological themes. They were based on mythology, religion, or even Roman literature. So they were they preserved the heritage. They were carriers of knowledge, which we luckily have access to even nowadays. So glass was not only about consumption of glass. It was also it had also aesthetic value of beauty, because we said vessels, we talk about perfume bottles or as a part of burials, but it wasn't always the case, I believe. But again, there is a lot of research on this topic, and it's more into archaeology, I might say. So it's a vast field of study.
Absolutely. Somebody's asking about the, I'm just reading here off the thing. About sourcing. I know that you said you're not very keen on the technical side, but is it possible then from the, let's look at it from the decorative side, is it possible that there are regional differences in style, or are the regional differences perhaps only because of the composition of the glass itself, or the area it was the materials were found in?
Well, definitely we can talk about style, and this was the last slide I prepared for you. I might share it once again. This one about snake thread decoration.
But is that linked to a particular region, a particular place?
As I mentioned, the one on the left, it's from the east, and on the right, it's from the north. It's from Germany. So you can trace the same technique, but into different. It diverged basically. On the one on the left hand side, it has like pattern or texture on top of the thread on the snake, so-called snake. Whereas on the right hand, you would see color and much more variety in lines and composition of them. So I would say there was a style, definitely, definitely.
There's quite a discussion going on contemporaneously on the chat about the color, heat, and movement of the glass will tell an experienced glass blower that the correct work about the temperature, what temperature is the correct temperature to blow the glass or mold the glass. So that's interesting. People have got interested in discussing these.
Yes, I can tell. Well, ideally you can blow glass at a high temperature, because then it's very easy. It's much more, as I said, the viscosity is better, so it's the plasticity. It's much more easier to shape it and expand. We've tried this as part of the project, and it's much more difficult when the temperature drops and there is not enough wood, and we would be like, oh, it's so difficult, and it makes that big difference. Even it can be a matter of few degrees.
Absolutely.
And now you remind me of something else I have to say, and I didn't. You might see those imperfections and bubbles inside the Roman glass.
Mhm.
And now you might be able to answer yourself, why can we see them? It's because of the composition. They were not refined. You would have just a mixture of raw components or of recycled glass, which was perhaps not well selected or sorted. So this uneven composition of material would cause those imperfections, which I personally find very beautiful.
Practical.
Again,
Yes.
but there are defects.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to bring this to a close.
Yes.
We could go on obviously chatting, and I can see that people are getting quite enthusiastic on the chat itself. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to everybody for participating in this evening's event, and we look forward to seeing you again next time, which I think, Anne will correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Katrina Brogan will be presenting ceramics and science and archaeometric analysis of early Maltese pottery on the 17th of March 2021 at the usual time of 6. If anybody's interested in finding out more or joining the ASM, please do visit our website at www.archstock.org.mt. You'll be helping the society if you join us, and you'll be enjoying its peer-reviewed journal, which is now up and running. Please go and have a look at it. It's looking great. And you'll be helping us in our advocacy work in support of all things archaeological in Malta. Of course, our sincere thanks from the Archaeological Society of Malta and the Department of Classics and Archaeology at the University of Malta to Liliya Pangelova this evening for her most enjoyable talk tonight. And we look forward to seeing you all again at our next event. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Liliya.